Apamea, on the right bank of the Orontes River, is the site of a treasure city and stud depot of the Seleucid kings. It was the capital of Apamene, became the capital and Metropolitan Archbishopric of late Roman province Syria Secunda, and has become a multiple Catholic titular see. The site contains the remains of the Roman theatre at Apamea, one of the largest surviving theatres of the Roman Empire, with an estimated seating capacity in excess of 20,000, as well as the remains of the Great Colonnade at Apamea, which ran for nearly 2 kilometres, making it among the longest and most famous in the Roman world. The site is found about 55 kilometres to the northwest of Hama, Syria, overlooking the Ghab Valley. History. Previously known as Apamea, it was fortified and enlarged by Seleucid I Nicator in 300 BC, who so named it after his Bactrian wife, Apamea, not his mother, as Stephanus asserts. In pursuance of his policy of Hellenizing Syria, it bore the Macedonian name of Pella. The fortress was placed upon a hill. The windings of the Orontes, with the lake and marshes, gave it a peninsular form, whence its other name of Cheronesos. Seleucus had his commissariat there, 500 elephants, with 30,000 mares and 300 stallions. The pretender, Diodotus Tryphon, made Apamea the basis of his operations. It was located at a strategic crossroads for eastern commerce, and was one of the 4 cities of the Syrian Tetrapolis. The city boasted one of the largest theatres in the Roman world, and a monumental colonnade. Emilius Secundus did a population survey in AD 6, in which he counted 117,000 homes civ, a figure that has been interpreted as giving a total population of either 130,000 or 500,000, depending on methods used. Josephus relates that Pompey, marching south from his winter quarters, probably at or near Antioch, razed the fortress of Apamea in 64 BC, whence the city was annexed to the Roman Republic. In the revolt of Syria under Caius Bassus, it held out against Julius Caesar for 3 years till the arrival of Cassius, 46 BC. Remarkably, we have the figure of 117,000 citizens of Apamea early in the 1st century. On the outbreak of the Jewish War, the inhabitants of Apamea spared the Jews who lived in the midst, and would not suffer them to be murdered or led into captivity. Destroyed by Chosroes I in the 6th century, it was partially rebuilt and known in Arabic as Apamea, and destroyed by an earthquake in 1152. In the Crusades it was still a flourishing and important place and was occupied by Tancred. Both the Jerusalem Targumim considered the city of Shapim to be identical with Apamea. Since Apamea virtually belonged to Rabbinic Palestine, the first fruits brought by Ariston from that town were accepted for sacrifice in Jerusalem. Remains. The Acropolis Hill is now occupied by the ruins called Khalat el-Mudik. The ruins, of a highly ornamental character and of an enormous extent, have still standing the remains, probably, of the temples of which Sisomen speaks. Part of the town is enclosed in an ancient castle situated on a hill. The remainder is to be found in the plain. In the adjacent lake are the celebrated black fish, the source of much wealth. As a result of the ongoing civil war in Syria, the ancient city has been damaged and looted by treasure hunters. Roman theatre, originally built as a Hellenistic-style theatre in the early Seleucid Empire. The theatre was expanded and remodeled in the early Roman period, when the main stage and entrances were reorganized in a more typical Roman fashion. The 115 Antioch earthquake caused severe damage to the structure. It was rebuilt soon after under patronage from both Trajan and Hadrian. The theatre was further expanded in the first half of the 3rd century CE. Under the Byzantine Empire, the theatre's drainage basin was restructured and a canal was built through the middle of the lower stage. By the late Byzantine period, the theatre had stopped serving as a center for theatrical performances. However, the theatre and its canal continued to play an important role as a water resource during the Byzantine and Islamic periods. The theatre was built into a steep hill overlooking the Orontes River valley. The theatre, along with the one at Ephesus, is one of the largest surviving theatres of the Roman Empire, with an estimated seating capacity in excess of 20,000. The only other known theatre, that is considerably larger, was the Theatre of Pompey in Rome. Much of the theatre structure is in ruins due to architectural collapses and extensive quarrying in later epochs, and only 1/8 of the site has been exposed so far. One of the main features of the theatre is its water basin and the elaborate Roman piping system used in it. The recently excavated terracotta system is located along the eastern ground entrance and is well preserved. Great Colonnade. The Great Colonnade was the main avenue of Apamea. It ran for nearly 2 kilometers, making it among the longest and most famous in the Roman world. It was built after the original Seleucid Empire. Colonnade was devastated, along with the rest of Apamea, in the 115 earthquake. Reconstruction started immediately, and over the course of the 2nd century the city was completely rebuilt, starting with the Great Colonnade. The colonnade was aligned along the north-south axis, making up the city's Cardo Maximus. Starting at the city's north gate, the colonnade ran in an uninterrupted straight line for almost 2 kilometers to the south gate. The northern third of the colonnade's stretch is marked by a monumental votive column that stood opposite the baths. The colonnade passed through the center of the city, and several important buildings were clustered around it, including the baths, the agora, the temple of Tyche, the nymphaeum, the rotunda, the atrium church, and the basilica. On either side of the street, a 6.15 meters wide colonnade ran its full length. The columns were 9 meters high and 0.9 meters in diameter. They stood on square bases of 1.24 meters on a side and 0.47 meters high. The columns display 2 main designs, a plain one and a distinctive spiral flutes. Archaeologist Jean Lassis argues that the former dates back to the Trajanic period, while the latter to that of Antoninus Pius. The colonnade's porticos were paved with extensive mosaics along the full stretch of the colonnade. Under the Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, several parts of the colonnade were restored. The street was narrowed to 12 meters by adding a sidewalk on either side. Several stretches of the street had the Roman pavement replaced with a new pavement made of squared blocks of limestone. The new pavement also covered a completely overhauled drainage system. Justinian's changes included erecting a monumental tetrastylon made up of 4 9 meters high columns with 1-meter-high capitals. The city was, however, later sacked by the Sasanians under Darmahan. Ecclesiastical History. A 6th century Notitia Episcopatuum shows that Apamea in Syria was the metropolitan see for 7 suffragan dioceses: Arethusa, Alanya, Epiphania in Syria, Larissa in Syria, Mariam, Raphania, and Seleucobellus. It became a Latin archiepiscopal see at the time of the Crusades. No longer a residential archdiocese, it became listed by the Catholic Church as a 4-fold titular see in the Latin and 3 Eastern Catholic rites. Titular Latin see. The diocese was nominally restored as a Latin Catholic Metropolitan titular Archbishopric in the 19th century as Apamea, renamed Apamea in Syria in 1933. It is vacant since decades, having had the following incumbents: Antonio Briganti, Paolo Papaardo, Eris Norman Michael O'Brien. Titular Maronite see established in 1970 as Maronite titular bishopric of Apamea in Syria, of the lowest rank. It is vacant since decades, having had the following incumbents of both episcopal and the intermediary ranks: titular Archbishop Ignace Abdo Khalife, Jesuits; titular Archbishop Antoine Joubert; titular Bishop Paul-Émile Sade; titular Melkite see, established in 1980 as Melkite Metropolitan titular see of Apamea in Syria. It is vacant, having had a single incumbent: titular Archbishop Jean Mansour, Society of Missionaries of St. Paul; titular Syrian see, established in 1920 as Syrian titular Metropolitan see of Apamea in Syria. It is vacant since decades, having had the following incumbents of the intermediary rank: titular Archbishop Clemente Migara as Papal Diplomat, Apostolic Nuncio to Czechoslovakia, Apostolic Nuncio to Belgium, Apostolic Internuncio to Luxembourg, created Cardinal Priest of S. Maria Sopra Minerva, promoted Cardinal Bishop of Velletri, also Cardinal Priest of S. Maria Sopra Minerva in Commendam, Prefect of the Sacred Congregation of Religious, Pro-Prefect of the Sacred Congregation of Rites, President of Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology, became Cardinal Vice Dean of Sacred College of Cardinals, Vicar General for the Vicariate of Rome, Camerlengo of Sacred College of Cardinals, Apostolic Administrator of Ostia, titular Archbishop Clement Ignace Mansourati. Notable residents: Al-Muqtana, Archigenes, Aristarchus of Thessalonica, Evagrius Scholasticus, Iamblicus of Chalce, Junius, Numenus of Apamea, Polychronius, Posidonius, Theodore.